very carefully about the way in which we celebrate or don't celebrate the election results in Bengal. I think there's already enough anxiety in Bengal about the amount of COVID spreading through the country that you could see this election result as just holding a line against the BJP. Nevertheless, we shouldn't be complacent in any way, because this is a government that has since 2014 come to power and stayed in power by spreading one thing and one thing only, which is simply hate. It has done so long before the COVID outbreak. It has failed signally to take its own advice, to take international health authorities' advice about limiting gatherings of more than 30 people, about social distancing. It has gone ahead with a massive number of rallies, and it's done all that in a context in which it has continued to blame minorities in the country, particularly Muslims and Christians, in a series of very damaging social media disinformation campaigns. So, for instance, if you look at the difference between the way in which the pilgrims who came for a Muslim event early in 2020 were treated and the way in which they were reprimanded nationally for having gathered together even before the lockdown was announced, and the way in which currently Hindu pilgrims are being celebrated for coming together in gatherings, you'll see that this massive double standard has really triggered this enormous catastrophe that we see unfolding in front of us. So I don't think that there is anything to be sanguine about. I want to be able to say to you, yes, it's a good thing that the BJP did not come to rule Bengal, but I want to also point out to you that the state which has done its best to contain coronavirus, which is Kerala, is a state in which not a single BJP candidate that came to power. And I think you should be talking as much about that. The government of India at the moment is more concerned about cracking down on criticism. It always has been. Anyone who showed any kind of dissent over the last 7 years has found themselves in extremely difficult situations. Many journalists have lost their jobs. Many journalists have lost their bylines. Many journalists have now lost their lives if they tried to contend with the ruling party. In fact, what you see is a government that is so concerned with image, a prime minister that is so concerned with image, that they have been parroting completely false information about coronavirus all the way since the first wave started. So we were told in quick succession by various arms of the government, by various different chief ministers who work for the government, that banging pots and pans, that eating various types of herbs would curb coronavirus. And it was only in January, when the government should have been making the fiercest effort to bring in oxygen supplies, to get vaccines in. And actually at that time, they were saying they had won against COVID. So if you look at the speech that Prime Minister Modi did at Davos, he was claiming that India had somehow beaten the virus. And yet what we're now seeing, I would consider it to be a form of murder, because people are not actually dying from the virus. Many people are dying because they can't get hospital beds, because they can't get drugs which would treat their COVID symptoms, and because they can't get oxygen. That is simply unacceptable. And it is totally understandable that it would boil over into anger. Yet what do we see this week? What we have seen this week is Twitter taking down more than 100 accounts of absolutely desperate people, legitimate citizens, asking the world to intervene and to help, and showing examples, just as you're showing now on your screen, of burning funeral pyres. So really what the government wants is a complete fabricated India, which doesn't show the realities. And it wants people to bow down and simply tell the Prime Minister that everything is okay in the best of all possible countries. And this is not the case. Anyone who loves India now simply has to see the truth, because this virus, this epidemic, this pandemic is not going away unless we do something about the people who are not controlling it, unless we do something and send a very clear message.